Hey guys, today I would like to state my worries about a game that I'm really excited and hopeful about, namely Final Fantasy XVI. This game is not yet released as I'm making this video, but I have been following it as closely as my time allows me to. And I really hope that I will be blown away on release day as my expectations are really high. With that said though, I have a few worries that I have spotted and that I'd like to discuss. The way I will do this is by narrowing the game down into 3 categories. These being story and plot, characters and growth, as well as gameplay and combat. I would also like to warn everyone watching that there will be spoilers from previous Final Fantasy games as well as other Square Enix titles. To not come off as an old school fanboy purist or a person that puts all his money on Final Fantasy VII, I will start by naming 5 things that I'm really excited about and that I think will make the game awesome. Starting off with number 1, the return to fantasy. From what I have seen, it looks like Final Fantasy is finally returning to a more fantasy-esque setting. This hasn't been done for a while, and as much as I appreciate games like Final Fantasy VII or Nier Automata, I still have a crush on the more medieval titles such as Final Fantasy IX and Final Fantasy Tactics. I think it's because of these games magic and artifacts carry more of an essential role and are usually more mysterious than in the more steampunk titles where magic is more of a gameplay thing than a world-building tool. From what I have read about the world of Alistea, the world used to be highly technological before its downfall. At the time of the game, however, the technology seemed to be far gone and more like a mystery. Number 2. A dark, grittier story. It seemed to me that Final Fantasy is trying to make a more gritty game focus on loss and tragedy. As far as we know, the main character Clive will search to avenge his fallen brother Joshua. I do however think that this is more of a concept used to throw you in a far more detailed story. Clive will grow as a character and most likely learn about himself while discovering who's really behind the world at war and the motives of each side. Also, I do enjoy myself some politics. Let's go. Number 3. Regions. The game is divided into regions similar to Final Fantasy XIV. From what we have seen, they look stunning. Personally, I very much prefer this to an open world, as regions does not limit itself by map size. In a region, you can also flesh out the most important parts without needing to fill in the blank spaces in between, giving the developers far more freedom in how they design it, as well as making the world feel larger with different biomes and weather depending on where you are. Number 4. The room for growth. The game will follow Clive in 3 different stages of his life, these being childhood, youth and adulthood. This will give him and those around him more room to develop as characters, and it will feel more realistic when they do. It is really hard to have characters grow in a normal way when the game is shoehorned down a thin timeline, and it doesn't really give the characters any time of personal reflection. Similar to the regions, this will give the developers more freedom to write and adjust characters without the need to flesh out every single second of it or rely fully on flashback or memories. Number 5. Yoshi P. What can I say, right? In Yoshi P we trust. Naoki Yoshida dug Final Fantasy XIV out of its grave as well as made it one of the most beloved and played games in the MMO genre. Not only that, it also has a great story with fun playable content. He's also a gamer himself and listens to the gaming community fanbase a lot, while still not making any rash decisions due to the pressure. If I would believe in anyone creating a game, that would be him. Now that you know that I'm just as excited as anyone else about the game, let's talk about the potential flaws. Starting off with my first category, this being story and plot. So from what we know, the world is at war as we follow Clive on a revenge quest. As I am quite sure of, this is just a way to kick the story off and a base motive. I'm not really worried about this part. I do instead feel that Yoshi P and his gang has shown me far too many times that they know how to write a good story, which I think they will do once again. My only slight worries would be that it would take time to create a narrative where the player is as invested in each character as you are by the end of Final Fantasy XIV. The first part, namely A Realm Reborn, is by far the weakest story part of Final Fantasy XIV. Not necessarily because the plot points are bad, but because you don't know the world or the characters as well by then. I really do hope they take the in-game time to make you feel connected to the world before they start going all in on plot twists and betrayal. The second category to be discussed will be characters and growth. To be honest, this is the category I'm mostly worried about. I think that they set up character growth well, with the choice of using 3 different stages of Clive's life. However, the issue lies within there being no playable party members. This is a problem because the playability is one of the biggest chances a game has to flesh out character's personality and to make you more invested in said character. Will they at least make each character customizable to a certain degree? Another thing we have no real clue about is if the NPC party members will be staying with the party or just stay as guests, similar to, let's say, RNAi in Final Fantasy 15. As far as I've seen on the gameplay videos, it's mostly Clive running around alone, which opens up the next question. How much will the NPC characters interact in the combat at all? The reason I feel this is important is that I have very hard to relate to a character when everything is so grand at scale and without some banter and small talk between party members. Without this, it might be hard to get to know each NPC enough to care about them. This is actually one of the reasons I really enjoy Tales of series, as I personally never liked the combat too much. Yeah, and I know, FF14 had a fun cast of characters outside of the Warrior of Light, but did you honestly care for them that much after just the first installment? Hopefully they can pull this off though. We're finally at the last category, being gameplay and combat. And you know what? I think the game looks awesome. I'm not an old school turn-based purist in any way, and I'm happy Final Fantasy changes things up, as I know there are so many good turn-based games out there, and I don't need Final Fantasy to fill that hole in my life. As I mentioned earlier, I would have preferred maybe a little bit more of a party-driven, more tactical game, but the action looks slick and the game looks fun. I know that the game is in good hands since Ryota Suzuki is the head of combat, and I know that he's been working on Devil May Cry and Dragon's Dogma. I'm extra curious to see how they will manage the larger-than-life scale battles between icons, but it definitely looks exhilarating. My main issue here is that the game has to stay fun for more than just a few battles, as I know hack and slashy combat tends to be repetitive. Another thing I do worry about is that I've heard somewhere that the game will have a stagger system, which in itself is something that I'm yet to like in any game I've played so far. It often limits the way the combat works. Once again, I'm more happy if the game can change my mind. And there it is, my worries about the game. Did I miss anything? What are your worries? And maybe more importantly, what are you hyped about? Tell me in the comments so we can discuss it there. Also, if you like this type of content, please like the video to help me with the algorithm, and maybe subscribe to get more of it. I will make a future video after the game is released to answer myself. Was I right about my claims? Hopefully you guys will be there watching me trash myself. Until then, hej då!